Hey, welcome back to Good Night. Tonight we have an interesting interview, and it needs a little setup in talking about it. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is considering changes that will potentially alter all cable operations discretions. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to change what people have become used to with community access. And it could have a detrimental effect on how you get your local news, how you get your business in your town, your city council, your board of selectmen, your mayor's meetings. It could potentially change all that. We are having the opportunity tonight to have Keith Thibault join us from the Northeast Alliance for Community Meeting to talk about it. Good evening, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, I think this is an important conversation because it affects everybody. But at the same time, this subject can be an ice cream headache because it's hard to wrap it around.
Yeah.
Do your best tonight to explain this to us.
Well, let me actually go back to how community media is actually licensed, not only in Massachusetts, but in many communities around the country. In 1984, Congress passed the Cable Communications Act, the Cable Act of 1984. And in that law, it allows for local communities, specifically Massachusetts. All our licenses are negotiated locally with either boards of selectmen or mayors. It allows local communities to negotiate a cable contract with a cable company, be it Comcast, Verizon, RCN, whatever cable company wants to service your city or town. And that's been in effect now for 35 years. And as part of that contract, there is the ability for local communities to ask for local cable access channels, the channels that you're watching us on right now in Ashland and in other communities across the Commonwealth and across the country. It not only allows for the allocation of channels, but also for the allocation of funds. The cable company, because they use and string their wires across our streets and under our streets in some instances, they use our local rights of way. The local communities can actually, in effect, charge these cable companies a rental fee, a fee for using our sidewalks and our streets to string their cables, to provide service to our communities, and to literally make millions of dollars off the selling of cable services. And that money, up to 5% of their revenues, can be brought back to cities and towns and can be used to fund local community access stations like WACA right there in Ashland. What is happening is, and this has been in effect for, as I said, 35 years, since 1984. What has actually happened in the past month is the FCC has decided to institute a rule which is very pro-cable television, the industry of cable television. And it's basically saying that even though that cities and towns can ask for this money, they've now instituted a rule that says, in effect, that the cable companies can charge back some of that money that they give to cities and towns based on some of what they call in-kind services within these cable contracts. And some of these in-kind services include things such as a lot of our cities and towns in our cable contracts have local cable services for schools and town halls. Part of the contract that the cable company will provide free cable service, basic cable service for schools and town hall. Well, now the cable company will be able to charge that back off the 5% that goes to, let's say, the town of Ashland and to WACA TV. Another instance is a lot of our cable access channels rely on what's called an institutional network, which is a network of cabling that allows WACA and other community stations to broadcast live from town hall back to the station, or from the schools back to the station and out to the community. The cable company will be able to charge that back. So, in effect, the cable company is going to be able to pay the money, but deduct some of it based on these in-kind services. And our fear is that it will be thousands of dollars and will negatively impact what cable access stations receive in Massachusetts and across the country.
All right, so there was a lot there.
There is.
and it's very concerning to me as a former selectman and a longtime publicly elected official the way people can get their news is you can watch a selectmen's meeting. You can watch a town council meeting. And there's the truth right there. I've been in many of meetings the next morning and read it in the newspaper and go, I didn't say that. He didn't say that. The only true transparency in government is these live meeting broadcasts. And if that goes away, the already over busy, already not paying attention public is going to have no idea how decisions are being made. So I am stunned that the FCC would even think about this. And more importantly, where is the leadership from Congress and the Senate on this issue? I mean, what's the feedback from them?
Well, one of the good things is we're getting a lot of good feedback from our Massachusetts delegation in Congress.
Okay.
All of our congressmen and I believe our 2 senators wrote letters to the FCC in opposition to this rule. So our congressional delegation in Massachusetts is doing its part. The issue we're facing is, quite frankly, it's a political one. The FCC is a 5-member board, and 3 of the 5 members currently are under Republican control. And that is due to the fact that whoever is the president at the time, that party that the president represents, serves under, has the ability to appoint 3 of the commissioners. So in effect, gaining a majority of the 5-member board. So that's what we're seeing right now in terms of Republican control of the FCC. Very pro-business, very less concerned about local community needs. And it's rearing its ugly head in terms of this rule. And we feel not really in the spirit of the law of the Cable Act that was passed 35 years ago.
So what does the public do? I mean, the clock is ticking. We're almost out of time already now. When's the new decision going to become law?
Well, just as a timeline, the FCC voted on the rule August 1st. There's a period that the rule still needs to be published in the Federal Register. Once it's published in the Federal Register, 30 days after that date, which we're anticipating it to be published sometime in early September, maybe the middle of September, 30 days after that, the rule will take effect. Then what will happen is that the cable companies, Comcast, Verizon, they will need to actually communicate with the cities and towns what their intentions will be in terms of what they plan to charge back and, in effect, deduct from franchise fees. After that, communities do have the opportunity to renegotiate their cable licenses, which will allow communities to say, well, we may not want X, Y, and Z because it may impact our funding of our community media. But the downside to renegotiation, John, is once you open negotiations again, before the window when the contract expires, everything is back on the table, not just the issues that you may want to bring up as a community. So a community like Ashland may say, we don't need X, Y, and Z because it'll be charged back. Well, the cable company will say, well, that's all well and good, but we also want to do X, Y, and Z, which may be another different negative impact to the cities and towns. So what will happen is we expect that the rule will take effect probably end of September, early October officially. And then there's going to be a period where the cable companies are going to need to talk to the cities and towns to let them know what will be charged back.
But that, not to interrupt you, Keith, but won't that be too late then for the public to react? I mean, it seems like now the sense of urgency needs to be from the public right now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only group that can do anything would be Congress. And as I said, our Massachusetts delegation is pretty much on board.
Yeah,
we're looking for
this is a
colleagues.
50-state decision. This isn't just one state. This is the entire Congress is going to make this. So if Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren support, keeping things the way it is, but the rest of the House and the Senate don't, there could be effects. So what I'm saying is there should be a letter writing campaign across the nation.
Well, we have, and the Alliance for Community Media has done that. We generated thousands of letters to the FCC in opposition to this. We feel that we have the law on our side. That Cable Act from 1984 stipulates quite clearly that cable companies are supposed to pay a fee And our interpretation is that fee is monetary. It says
Okay.
nothing about being charged back for any other in-kind services. So we feel that, and there will be legal action taken against this rule. Unfortunately, the rule will still take effect. While this will eventually play out in court, may take a couple of years, may be overturned. We feel we have that on our side. The other thing we have on our side, John, is the fact that just basic contract law, right?
Okay.
There's a contract between the town of Ashland and the cable companies. And this seems to supersede just basic contract law where two parties negotiate in good faith over the terms of a deal, and this seems to supersede that. So that's another issue.
And that, I'm glad you brought that point up because I was going to bring up that point myself. Is that there are contracts in place, so at the very least the contracts would have to run out, and then this new law would come into effect. As you and I were talking off camera, I've done a political talk show on community access for a decade now, and being a Republican even, I will tell you that this is unacceptable. And I will also tell you, as a longtime elected official, getting a letter is so much different than social media pressure and getting a phone call to the office.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to lie. I've gotten thousands of letters over the years, and you read it and you go, okay, but it's more impactful if the staff comes in and says, hey, senator or congressman, we got 100 phone calls about this FCC ruling today, or did you see what they're saying about us on social media? I think this is a huge, important issue, and I'd like to think it's not a partisan issue. I'm hearing a little bit from you that it might be a little bit.
It is. I think it is, yeah.
But how do we rally and how do we get this out there? Because people are going, what I fear is, and having been involved in local politics for a long time, is people are like, well, nobody told me. I didn't know about this. How come their meetings aren't on? And the horse is already going to be out of the barn is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what more can we do?
Well, I would make a personal challenge to you, John, being a Republican.
Sure.
If you have any friends that know friends in Congress and other states that are Republicans, we have yet to get a letter of support to the FCC against this rule from any Republican in Congress.
Any?
Zero.
Any?
It's been zero.
Okay.
So that would help. It appears that a lot of our Republican friends in Congress may not see the value that they may lose, because I'm sure there are many like you, Republicans and Democrats alike, who used community media to get elected, right? You're speaking directly to the community.
Correct.
People recognize you, and when they see your name at the ballot box, hey, I know John. He was doing that political show. I think he's a good guy. I'm going to vote for him. I'm sure there are Republicans across the country that benefited as well, and we need those people to make hay. And as of right now, we have none.
Well, I'm a top-down type of guy, so
Yep.
I say we start at the top, and we go after the president, and then we go after, this is too important of an issue. And like I said, I like to think this isn't a partisan issue. I think this is an awareness issue and the impacts that are going to be had, because, sure, a pro-business platform is always, something that a legislator can get behind, but the consequences of this, I think, are going to be way too much.
Yeah, especially in a time when we're seeing media being chastised, correctly or not, from our president down.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also losing our local connection. You mentioned it earlier about getting local news.
Mm-hmm.
Number of newspapers are being cut. People are being laid off. The independent media is not where it used to be years ago. And community media, as it stands even today, is in some instances the last bastion of localism to spread community news to a community. I know all of us are on social media. All of us get a lot of information from social media, but you also need to take some of that information with a grain of salt.
Absolutely.
You may get news from a friend, and that person you may think is extremely reliable, but they may be passing along something that may not necessarily be true. And that's the fault sometimes of social media. And you kind of need this buffer of independent local media to be that nonpartisan voice to allow all voices to be on in a local community. And it's at peril right now. It really is.
You're watching Good Night. We're tuned, and we're talking to Keith Thibault from the North Alliance for Community Media. And Keith, you brought up a huge point that I think gets kind of glossed over now. With the downsizing of local newspapers and local media and the newspaper business as a whole, a lot of times in smaller communities, the newspaper actually watches the tape meeting from the local cable access companies and does the reporting on it 2, 3, 4, sometimes even a week after. So think about that. Your local newspaper goes away. Your local cable access channel goes away or gets downsized dramatically. You're not going to get any news.
That's
You're
right.
not going to get any news. And people's, why did my water bill go up? Why didn't I know this road was going to be closed? Why did they close the library? People are not going to know this stuff. And I think people are going to be outraged. So what I pledge to you is that we're going to work on that aspect of it. We're going to promote this. We're going to do a top-down, bottom approach. We're going to start with the president. We're going to start with Congress. We're going to start with Senate, and we're going to get it out there. But I need some stuff from you, though, too.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things that's important is you hit it right on the head. It's the localism aspect and angle of all this. You've heard Tip O'Neill, all politics is local.
Sure.
Well, in some way, all information is local as well, because you're not going to be able to find out what's in your community. And it'll impact more a town like Ashland. I'm not quite sure. Do you have a weekly paper there? Do you still have a weekly at all?
We actually have a daily. It's called the Metro West Daily News. But, it used to be this thick, and now it's, this thick,
Right.
So.
Right. So you're seeing the degradation of coverage that you're getting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
night and day in the last decade, yeah.
Right. And as much as I said earlier, as people get their information from their friends, either via text message or on social media, it still may not be accurate. And the gavel coverage we see on our government stations with boards of selectmen and city councils, there's no editing there, right? You're seeing it. You're seeing warts and all of that coverage. And that's a direct way for people to find out what's happening in their community. And if that goes away, these meetings will be held. There'll be a few people who will attend the meetings. They'll know what happened, but the broader community will not be able to find out what happens if we are to go away.
Now, you as the national chair, when you reach out to congressmen and senators, what is the feedback that you're getting?
Well,
both positive and negative.
Well, the negative is not really there, but the inaction is there. As I mentioned before, we're fortunate enough to have Democratic support, political party Democrat support of our issues. They appreciate localism a lot more than our Republican friends would, even though our Republican friends have benefited from our services over the years. Again, case in point, I'm talking to one. It's one of the things that we have had conversations with a number of key Republican senators and their staffs, not the senators, the staffs by and large.
Right.
Staffs have been very respectful to meeting with people and meeting with constituents. I just don't think that in some ways they equate the threat that's here. And I think unfortunately it's going to be something like we see in many instances that, as you mentioned, John, people won't say anything until it's gone. At that point, where are we?
Yeah, and you don't know how much you love something until it's gone. And all right, so you've energized me this evening.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
You have totally energized me. I've lived this. I've loved it. Community access is the only transparency that is left in government, and this is way too important. So I'm making a pledge. Donald Trump, I'm coming after you on this one. This is way too important of an issue. The House and the Senate, we're going to come after you on this one. It's way too important. So we only got a couple minutes left here, Keith. What more do we need to know, and what more can people do?
Well, I think what people can do is just to continue to support what they see on local community cable access. Um, don't take us for granted.
Yeah.
Appreciate what's being done in your local communities. I know the great work being done there at WACA TV. The crew there is fantastic.
They are.
In terms of what they've done over the years, and it's something that people need to just continue to support with their viewership, with their stewardship, and just making sure that that we are continue to be a vital information resource. And again, it's one of those things. Unfortunately, is when you don't have it, is when you miss it. So let's not get to that point. If any people who are listening and watching, still feel free to call your congressman, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, even though they've written letters of support. More calls they get from you, more letters, as you said, John, they get from you. Maybe it'll get them to try to talk to their colleagues in the Senate a little more. We don't anticipate anything's going to happen in Congress right away. It doesn't seem to be on their radar. There's a lot of big issues that, of course, are before Congress, but we just need to keep them aware of what this means. And it's not only localism in terms of media, but also goes back to the ability of our communities to regulate their local streets, their local rights of way. And that's being threatened equally here than the cable access industry. If you own a piece of property and someone wants to do work on your property or wants to seek an easement across property to make money, you're not just going to give that away. You have the right to regulate what happens on your property.
Right.
And part of this is a process that may lead to eventually the federal government getting involved in local issues and negatively impacting what cities and towns can do in terms of controlling their local rights of way and gaining rent for the use of that rights of way.
You don't want your federal government regulating your local media. Oh, that's a recipe for disaster, I think.
Right.
All right, so social media links. How can people help on social media? Is there a link or anything, or a page that people can go to?
Well, I mean, just go to your local community media Facebook pages and social media pages. I know at our station, my station's in Fall River, Massachusetts, and we share a lot of things on social media. We just ask that our viewers continue to share what we're putting out there, and I ask everyone else just to continue to like and share what's happening on social media. More information is going to come out. You're right, John. It's difficult for the average citizen to maybe grasp what's going on here,
right?
Because there's a lot of wonkiness to it. But it is important that if there is not resources available to continue community media, it will go away. And our main source of revenue is through these cable contracts that our selectmen and our mayors negotiate every 10 years to continue to provide service. And I'll just say one other thing quickly.
Sure.
The cable companies make millions of dollars off the people of Ashland and the people of Fall River through the services they provide. And as a business, they have every right to make money and provide a service they feel is important to the community. All we're asking is that for the use of our roadways, the use of our streets, and our sidewalks, that they give a little back to the community. And in the case of WACA and my access center, it does relate to jobs.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
Right, so it is a jobs creator. It's not thousands of jobs, but collectively it is across the country if this were to go away.
Well, and you mentioned how great the crew here is over the years, and as I've had the opportunity to be with this station for over a decade now, I've actually had the pleasure of working with high school kids, college kids, that I've now seen that have grown to be young adults who have careers inside the industry, and they would never have that opportunity if local cable did not exist. It's been a springboard for so many talented young adults that the thought of that ever going away it's unacceptable to me. It's totally unacceptable to me. So we got a lot of work to do, Keith.
Yeah, we do. And one of the things you'll see is you will hear shortly after the rule goes into effect that there will be legal challenges. There's,
But they got deeper pockets than you do.
There's no doubt about that.
Right. Yep.
But there is the possibility that that legal process will ask for a stay of the rule. That is maybe unlikely to happen because you have to prove irreparable harm when you ask for a stay, and that may be difficult. So, but we feel, as I said earlier, that we have the law on our side. We have just basic contract law on our side. Two parties agreeing, negotiating in good faith toward an agreement. So we feel that ultimately that we hope to be successful legally, but in the meantime, there's going to be some hurt, no doubt about it.
All right, Keith, we got a lot of work to do. We appreciate you taking some time on a Monday night to talk about this important issue. I pledge to you, I'll be back in touch, and we're going to have some Republicans that you're going to talk to. So that is my pledge to you. Hey, that's Tim Thibault from the Northeast Alliance for Community Meeting. He is the chairman of it. He's taken the time. This is an important issue, people. We got to pay attention. And we're going to take a quick break right here on Good Night, and we'll be right back right after this.